Today, we're diving straight into the terrifying duality of the ocean's absolute most mysterious and destructive phenomena. We're going to explore a side of the open water that honestly sounds like pure science fiction, but, as you'll soon see, is deeply embedded in cold, hard scientific fact.
Just picture it. Imagine for a second you're sailing on a calm, quiet day. You feel completely safe. Then, out of absolutely nowhere, you look up, and there's this towering wall of water crashing down on you. Or perhaps even worse, you look down and the deck of your ship is suddenly dropping into a vast, terrifying pit right in the middle of the sea. Seriously, neither outcome gives you much of a chance to react.
Okay, so here's what we're actually dealing with. It's really two opposite but equally deadly forces. On one side we have rogue waves. These are giant, sudden walls of water that literally dwarf everything around them. And then on the exact opposite side of that spectrum, we have rogue holes. These are sudden, massive voids that just open right up, dropping sharply down into the ocean.
Now, to really grasp what we're up against, we need to define what a rogue wave actually is. And let's be clear, it's not a tsunami. It's not caused by an underwater earthquake or some volcano. It's a completely spontaneous anomaly that just rises out of nowhere in the open ocean, sometimes towering like a 10-story skyscraper. Mathematically speaking, they're defined as being at least twice as tall as the surrounding waves. And the craziest part, they can move in entirely different directions than the wind and the currents.
Let's look at the history here. Part 1, Myths and Mockery, and Centuries of Disbelief.
You know, for hundreds of years, the scientific establishment basically brushed these terrifying encounters off as mere sailors' exaggerations. They treated them exactly like sightings of mermaids or a giant kraken. Just look at this timeline of disbelief. Way back in August 1498, Christopher Columbus reported hearing this enormous roar from the sea, right before his ships were lifted by a wave as tall as the mast and then dropped into a massive trough, like a giant water roller coaster. Jump ahead to 1826, and French naval officer Dumont d'Urville recorded 80 to 100-foot waves in the Indian Ocean during a storm that actually claimed a crewmate. Then, in 1861, an alleged wave smashed a lighthouse in Ireland, literally shattering the lamps. Just think about that. To do that, the water had to climb a 130-foot cliff and then another 85 feet up the lighthouse itself. That is a 215-foot vertical climb.
And yet nobody in the scientific community believed it. Even when Dumont d'Urville brought back his terrifying accounts of those 100-foot waves, he wasn't praised for surviving, he was openly laughed at. The science of the era stubbornly insisted that the absolute physical limit of a wave's height was just 30 feet. Period. The math, they claimed, just didn't support anything larger.
But everything changes in Part 2, the Dropner turning point, and proof in the North Sea.
That rigid scientific consensus, it was completely shattered on January 1st, 1995. That was the day the myth officially became a terrifying reality. A monstrous 80-foot wave smashed directly into the Dropner offshore gas platform in the North Sea of Norway. And this wasn't just another sailor's tall tale. This was a wave striking a platform rigged with highly sensitive, modern measuring instruments. The laser sensors did not lie. It became the very first rogue wave, officially and undeniably recorded by science.
Well, that 84-foot reading pretty much opened the floodgates. By the year 2000, the European Space Agency launched the Max Wave project. Using satellite radar to scan the global ocean, they confirmed that rogue waves weren't just real, they were terrifyingly common. In a very short period, the radar caught massive peaks frequently exceeding 82 feet, with some monster waves reaching up to 98 feet near Newfoundland. So suddenly, these impossible waves were proven to be happening all the time.
Which brings us to Part 3, the science of rogue holes and the hidden pattern behind them.
While scientists were looking for these giant peaks in the satellite data, they also noticed something else: unexplained massive drops appearing right alongside them. Now, to safely study if these oceanic potholes, or rogue holes, actually existed without, putting real ships in danger, a team of researchers at Kyoto University built a 50-foot-long wave tank. It basically acted as a perfectly controlled mini-ocean. By precisely adjusting wave sizes and speeds, they successfully recreated both giant rogue waves and deep rogue holes, right, in a laboratory setting. And in doing so, they uncovered a fascinating hidden mechanic.
Okay, so here's the secret sauce. It's all about the specific alignment of energy. Imagine normal, fast-repeating waves moving across the surface, kind of like speed bumps. Now, imagine a much slower, bigger wave acting like a rolling hill beneath them, lifting everything up and down. If that unseen rolling hill pushes up right when a fast wave is at its highest peak, they stack together, and boom, you get a sudden skyscraper of water. But, and here's the scary part, if that same rolling hill pushes down precisely when a wave is at its lowest point, the ocean suddenly drops beneath your feet, creating a massive rogue hole.
This entire chaotic dance of water is beautifully and, frankly, terrifyingly described by something physicists call the nonlinear Schrödinger equation. Yes, the exact same kind of math used to describe quantum physics brilliantly explains how the ocean's energy perfectly aligns here. In 2016, scientists finally confirmed that real, chaotic ocean measurements perfectly matched the predictions of this mathematical model. It definitively proved that rogue waves and rogue holes are not isolated flukes. They're basically two different shapes of the exact same terrifying event, dictated entirely by timing and energy.
Let's move on to part 4, a present and growing danger. So how does all this tie into the realities of modern ocean navigation and coastal safety? Because, as we now know, these aren't just anomalies occurring out in the middle of nowhere where nobody goes. Take a look at the sheer disparity recorded on November 17, 2020 by a weather buoy off the coast of Vancouver Island. The surrounding ocean was relatively normal, with waves averaging about 20 feet. Then, an absolute monster abruptly spiked out of those seas, measuring nearly 58 feet high. It perfectly illustrates how incredibly fast and disproportionately large these waves can be compared to the water immediately surrounding them.
And make no mistake, these strikes have severe, modern consequences. We're not just talking about ancient historical footnotes from the days of wooden sailing ships. In November 2022, a rogue wave slammed into the Viking Polaris cruise ship near Antarctica, tragically taking one life and injuring several others. In September 2023, a massive wave smashed right into a beach restaurant in South Africa, injuring 7 people. And just recently, in January 2024, powerful rogue waves slammed into a U.S. military site in the Marshall Islands, heavily damaging buildings and flooding areas far inland. These sudden monsters strike without warning today, everywhere from deep polar waters to sunny shorelines.
Now, what makes this all so unsettling? And if there's one thing you take away from this explainer, let it be this. It's just how little we actually know about the very environment generating these forces. We have mapped less than 1/1000th of our ocean floor up close. To put that in perspective, the area of the ocean we truly, deeply understand is barely the size of Rhode Island, or maybe Luxembourg. More than 99.9% of the deep trenches, the underwater mountains, the massive caves on our maps, they're all just blurry, unknown mysteries.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought. For centuries, the smartest minds in the world laughed at the idea of 100-foot walls of water and deep oceanic voids. They called them mere fairy tales. Well, if science is only just now proving that rogue waves and terrifying rogue holes are very real, mathematically verifiable phenomena, it begs the ultimate question. With over 99% of our ocean still a total mystery, what else is waiting out there to be discovered?